My wife cheated while I worked 80-hour weeks to buy our dream home, so I sold it, took the cash, and left her begging me to return. I'm a 34-year-old guy, and for the past 5 years, my life revolved around one goal: building our dream home. Not just any house, but the one that would finally represent how far Emma and I had come together. We started from nothing, tiny apartment, shared takeout dinners, secondhand furniture. I still remember her smile when I told her one day, "We'll have a place that's truly ours." That promise became my entire purpose. I took every overtime shift I could, find a tower weeks, weekends, nights that bled into mornings. My hands ached, my back throbbed, but every drop of sweat felt worth it because I thought I was building something for us. Emma would text me little things like, "Don't overwork yourself, babe. Can't wait to decorate our kitchen." Those messages kept me going when exhaustion made me see double. But as the months passed, things started to feel uneven. She stopped visiting the site, even when I begged her to come see the progress. She'd laugh it off. "You love that drywall more than me." I thought she was joking, but the words stuck. She began spending more new clothes, spa days, self-care weekends. I told myself she deserved it after how hard we'd worked. But deep down, I could feel the distance growing. Sometimes, when I'd come home after midnight, she'd already be asleep or pretending to be. I'd lie there beside her, covered in dust and paint, staring at the ceiling, imagining her reaction when she finally saw the finished house. That image, the surprise, the tears, the pride, was what kept me alive now. After years of saving, sweating, and sacrificing everything, the house is nearly done. The walls are painted, the floors gleam, and I'm planning a special night to surprise her. I have no idea that what I'm about to uncover will shatter everything I thought we were building. The closer we got to finishing the house, the more I noticed Emma slipping away from me. I told myself it was stress, that maybe she just needed time to adjust after years of struggle. But something in her eyes had changed. She was there, physically, but emotionally. It felt like I was talking to a stranger wearing her face. She started spending more time at the gym, said it helped her clear her head. At first, I was happy she was taking care of herself. But soon, her workouts turned into late-night classes, followed by drinks with her new fitness friends I'd never met. When I'd call to check in, she'd sound distracted. "Babe, can we talk later?" I'm with the group. The tone wasn't cold, it was distant, like she'd already half moved on from the version of me that was still breaking his back for us. Meanwhile, my schedule was brutal. I'd leave before sunrise, come home after dark. My coworkers teased me, said I was married to the job. Maybe I was. I just thought once the house was done, everything would settle, that the long nights and missed dates would make sense. But small red flags kept flashing: her perfume lingering too long on fresh clothes, her phone lighting up with messages she'd quickly swipe away. When I asked who it was, she'd laugh, "Relax, it's just people from the gym." One night after another 14-hour shift, I drove past a cafe near her gym. Through the window I saw her hair perfect, eyes glowing in the candlelight, laughing with a man I didn't recognize. My first instinct wasn't anger. It was disbelief. Maybe it was work-related, or maybe I was imagining it. But as I sat in my car watching her smile in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months, something inside me began to crack. I drove home in silence, convincing myself there had to be an explanation, but deep down, I already knew the truth was coming for me. The next morning, I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe that guy was just a coworker or a client. Emma was beautiful and outgoing. People were drawn to her. I couldn't let paranoia ruin the one thing I'd worked so hard to protect when she came home that evening. I tried to sound casual. "Hey, saw you near that cafe last night. Who were you meeting?" She didn't even flinch. "Oh, that. Just Ryan. He's helping me look into investment properties, for our future." Her voice was smooth, confident, too confident. I wanted to believe her, so I did, because believing her was easier than imagining what the alternative meant. Over the next few days, I kept trying to close the gap between us. I invited her to help me pick paint colors, fixtures, furniture, anything to make her feel involved again. But every time, she brushed me off. "You've got better taste than me," she'd say, barely glancing up from her phone. Once, when I asked her to visit the site, she sighed and muttered, "You care more about that house than our marriage." I didn't know what to say. She wasn't wrong. I did care about the house. but only because it symbolized us. It was proof that our years of struggle meant something, that every lonely night and missed dinner was worth it. That night, I stood inside the almost finished living room, breathing in the scent of fresh paint. I pictured her walking through the front door, eyes wide with joy, finally understanding why I worked so hard. I placed a framed photo of us by the fireplace, one where she was laughing, looking at me like I was her whole world. I whispered, "This is for us," and turned off the lights. But as I walked out, a part of me wondered if that photo was already a relic of a love that no longer existed. The day the house was finally finished felt surreal. I stood in the middle of the empty living room, sunlight streaming through the massive windows, dust floating like gold in the air. Every nail, every board, every sleepless night tit was all here, tangible proof of years of sacrifice. I wanted Emma to walk in and feel what I felt, pride, gratitude, and the sense that we'd made it, so I decided to surprise her. I spent the entire day setting everything up, lit candles along the staircase, played our wedding song softly through the speakers, chilled a bottle of champagne she'd been saving for the big moment. I even printed one of our wedding photos and set it on the mantel. This wasn't just a house anymore, it was the culmination of everything we'd been through together. I called her that evening, my heart pounding. "Hey, I've got something to show you. Can you come by the site tonight?" She sounded distracted. "Now? I'm kind of out with friends. Maybe tomorrow." I laughed nervously. "Come on, just for a few minutes. It's worth it." She hesitated, then said, "I can't tonight, babe. Rain check." I stood there, phone still to my ear, listening to the click of the call ending. The candles flickered around me, their light bouncing off empty walls. The champagne slowly lost its chill. I told myself maybe she'd show up later, maybe she'd surprise me instead. But as the hours passed, it became clear she wasn't coming. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, surrounded by the echoes of everything I'd built for us. My phone buzzed again this time, a text from a mutual friend. "Hey, thought you should know. Saw Emma at the hotel bar near downtown. She wasn't alone." My chest tightened. The air felt heavy, suffocating. I didn't know if it was denial or instinct, but I got up, blew out the candles, and drove home in silence. Somewhere between those empty streets and that empty house, I realized the celebration I dreamed of was never going to happen. The next morning, I couldn't shake the image of her, laughing with another man. My mind kept trying to rewrite it. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe I misunderstood, but my gut wouldn't let it go. I'd built our future with my hands, and suddenly it felt like the foundation beneath me was cracking. I didn't want to snoop, but curiosity turned into desperation. Emma and I shared a cloud account for our home design plans, photos, paint samples, receipts. One night, after she'd fallen asleep, I logged in. At first, everything looked normal. Then I noticed a new folder labeled Inspo Trips. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were hundreds of photos. Dinners, beaches, hotel rooms. Her and that same man Rian smiling, holding hands, kissing. The timestamps matched the months I'd been working overtime. The nights I'd texted her, "I love you," while she was supposedly with friends. I could barely breathe. My heart wasn't racing, it was sinking. The next morning, I confronted her. She was brushing her hair in the mirror when I said, "Who's Ryan?" Her hand froze mid-stroke. "What are you talking about?" she said without turning around. I opened my phone, showing her the photos. For a moment, she didn't move. Then she let out a long sigh and finally faced me. "You're paranoid," she said flatly. "You've been working yourself into a hole. Maybe if you were home once in a while, I wouldn't need attention elsewhere." Her words hit harder than the betrayal itself. It wasn't guilt I saw on her face, it was annoyance, like I'd inconvenienced her by finding out I couldn't yell. I couldn't cry. I just stared at her, feeling something inside me die quietly. Without another word, I grabbed my keys and walked out. The world outside felt cold and wrong, like I'd stepped out of my own life and into someone else's nightmare. And for the first time in years, I didn't know if I'd ever walk back through that front door again. I spent the next few nights at a friend's apartment, sleeping on his worn-out couch, staring at the ceiling until morning. Everything I'd built, every ounce of effort, every dream felt like a cruel joke. But amid the numbness, one thought began to surface through the fog. The house. Our house. The one she'd never really cared about, but I had poured my soul into. While going through my documents, I stumbled upon the property file I'd kept neatly folded in my work bag. Out of habit, I opened pages of contracts, mortgage agreements, closing statements. My eyes stopped on one line that made my pulse quicken. Owner of record, my name only. I read it twice. Then again, the realization hit like a jolt of electricity. Emma's name wasn't anywhere on it. I'd offered to put it under both our names when we started the process. But she'd said, "Babe, you handle all that boring stuff. I trust you." I hadn't thought much of it then, but now, it felt like fate had handed me the one piece of power I still had left. That's when something inside me shifted. The heartbreak didn't fade, it hardened. The man who begged for her affection was gone, replaced by someone colder, quieter, more focused. I wasn't going to scream or chase or demand closure. I was going to let her think she'd won. The next evening, I called her. My voice was steady. "Emma, I'm sorry. I overreacted. Maybe we can start fresh." There was a pause, then a relieved sigh. "I knew you'd calm down," she said softly. "Let's just move on, okay?" I agreed, keeping my tone warm, even affectionate. She had no idea that the man she thought she'd manipulated was already planning his next move. She wanted attention. Fine, she'd get it, but not the kind she expected. Something in me whispered, "Don't just leave them this on your terms." When I moved back home a few days later, Emma greeted me like nothing had happened. She hugged me at the door, tears glistening in her eyes, whispering, "I'm so glad you came to your senses." I hugged her back, pretending to forgive her, pretending to still be the man who once believed in us. But in that moment, I wasn't her husband. I wasn't her husband before her storm. She slipped so easily back into routine. Morning smoothies, gym sessions, phone calls she'd take in the other room. I watched it all with detached curiosity, like an outsider studying a performance. Every time she smiled at her phone, I smiled too, because I knew what she didn't. I was done being the fool in her story. I played my role well. I brought her flowers, made her breakfast, even joked about how stupid I'd been. She lapped it up, thinking she'd regained control. What she didn't know was that between every fake apology and forced smile, I was contacting realtors, meeting with a lawyer, and setting up a private account in my name at night. While she slept beside me, I'd lie awake planning every detail: what to take, what to sell, how to disappear cleanly. I didn't want revenge born out of rage. I wanted precision. I wanted the kind of revenge that would hit her where it hurt most: her comfort, her vanity, her illusion of control. When I told her I had to go on a business trip for a few weeks, she barely looked up from her phone. "Don't work too hard this time," she said with a smirk. I smiled, kissed her on the forehead, and replied, "Don't worry, I won't." She didn't realize that when I walked out that door, it wasn't for work. It was for freedom. The next time she'd hear my name, her entire world would already be collapsing. The first thing I did, after leaving for my so-called business trip, was meet with a real estate agent I'd quietly hired. She was discreet, professional, and didn't ask questions. When I told her I wanted to sell the house fast, no showings, no public listings, cash only, she raised an eyebrow but nodded. "I can make that happen." Over the next few days, I packed up the things that actually mattered: my father's watch, my old journals, a few tools I'd used to build the house from the ground up. Everything else I left behind. The furniture, the decor, the appliances she'd picked, most of it anyway. I wanted her to have the illusion of stability for just a little longer. Emma still called me every night, pretending to be the loving wife again. "I miss you, babe. When are you coming home?" I'd smile into the phone and say, "Soon, just a few more days to wrap things up." She had no idea I was signing papers instead of contracts. Within a week, the agent called with an off-rent above market, all-cash deal. My heart pounded as I read the amount. It was more than I'd ever dreamed of. I signed everything, transferred the funds to my private account, and stared at the confirmation email for a long time. It didn't feel like victory, yet Tet felt like closure whispering from a distance. Before the sale finalized, I made one last trip to the house. It was quiet, sterile, beautiful. The walls still smelled faintly of fresh paint. I ran my hand along the kitchen counter, the one Emma said she couldn't wait to cook on. Funny, she never cooked a single meal there as I locked the door behind me. I whispered, "Goodbye, Emma." It wasn't anger anymore, just peace, the kind that comes when you've finally accepted the truth. The next day, the house legally belonged to someone else, and Emma still didn't know. She was too busy living her lie to notice that her home, her comfort, her kingdom was already gone. It was a Friday afternoon when everything finally unraveled. Emma called me, chirping about some dinner she wanted to host once I got back. I played along, asking her to pick up some wine for the weekend. She laughed, completely unaware that in less than 24 hours, strangers would be moving into what she thought was our home. The sale closed that morning. The funds were secure. The keys were handed over. I watched from a distance as the moving trucks pulled up to the driveway I'd once shoveled by hand, unloading boxes and laughter. For the first time in months, I felt light. Around 6 p.m., my phone started blowing up. First one missed call, then another, then 10. Finally, a text came through. "Emma, there are people in our house. What's going on?" I didn't reply. An hour later, the messages grew frantic. "Where are you? Why are there strangers in our home? They said it was sold. Tell me this is a mistake." I waited until the calls turned into voicemails, her voice cracking between sobs and anger. Then I sent one final text. "Check your email." In that email, I'd attached everything the proof of her affair. Screenshots of her messages with Ryan and the finalized documents of the house sale. No insults, no explanations, just facts. She called me within minutes, screaming through the phone, "You can't do this. This is my house. You can't just take everything." My voice was calm. "You're right. It was our house. But you gave it up the moment you decided to build your future with someone else." She begged, then crying, promising to change, to fix things, to be better. I listened in silence, standing under the gray sky as her sobs echoed through the speaker. Then I whispered, "Goodbye, Emma," and ended the call. The line went dead, but her voice stayed with me, broken, desperate, hollow. And yet, for the first time in years, I didn't feel empty. I felt free. The fallout hit faster than I expected. Within days, everyone in our circle knew something had gone terribly wrong. Friends texted, confused. Her family called, demanding answers. Emma had told them I lost it, that I'd sold the house out of spite after a fight. But it didn't take long for the truth to spread, especially after her affair photos made their way into the same group chats she'd once bragged in. She went from admired to pitied overnight. The man she'd cheated with, Ryan, cut all contact the moment things got messy. He blocked her on everything, even changed gyms. I heard from a mutual friend that she showed up at his apartment once, pounding on his door until security escorted her out. I didn't feel joy hearing that tea, just felt distance, like I was listening to a story that no longer belonged to me. Meanwhile, I moved to cities away. Small apartment, quiet neighborhood, nothing fancy. I didn't need fancy anymore. I needed peace. My days became simple coffee at sunrise, work at a slower pace, walks in the evening. The noise in my head started to fade. Sometimes, though, the memories slipped back in. I'd remember her laugh, the way she used to hug me from behind while I cooked breakfast, the sound of her voice when she said, "We're in this together." And then I'd remember the hotel bar, the photos, her words, "Maybe if you were home more," and any trace of nostalgia would dissolve into quiet acceptance. One night, sitting on my balcony with a beer, I realized something. I'd spent years trying to build a home for someone who never truly wanted one with me. The house wasn't our dream, it was mine. And losing her wasn't the tragedy I thought it was. For the first time in forever, no alarms, no texts, no pretending. Just silence, and it felt perfect. Months passed before I heard from her again. I thought she'd moved on, maybe found another way to rebuild the life she'd shattered, but one morning, my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't saved but would recognize anywhere. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hi," she said softly. Her voice trembled, like someone rehearsing an apology they didn't fully believe in. "Can we talk?" I almost hung up, but curiosity kept me there. "About what?" I asked. "I messed up," she whispered. "I didn't know what I had until I lost it. I thought I was bored, but I was just stupid. Please, can we meet?" I didn't respond right away. The silence stretched between us until she filled it with nervous babble, how she'd moved into a tiny apartment, how her friends had disappeared once the truth got out, how she couldn't sleep without hearing my voice. I listened expressionless as she painted herself as the victim of her own choices. Finally, I said, "Emma, You didn't lose me because you made a mistake. You lost me because you made a choice again and again." Her breath hitched. "But we can fix it," she pleaded. "We had everything. The house doesn't matter. We can start over." I almost laughed, but there was no humor left in me. "The house was never the problem," I said quietly. "It was the foundation." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she asked, "Where are you now?" I looked out at the calm skyline, sunlight breaking through the clouds. "Somewhere you'll never find," I said simply. She started crying, saying she still loved me, that I'd always be her home. I ended the call mid-sentence. The phone went silent, and in that silence, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Absolute peace. I didn't love her either. I was finally done. It's strange how peace doesn't arrive like fireworks. It comes quietly, like dawn after a long storm. Weeks turned into months, and life began to feel real again. Not the life I'd built for someone else, but the one I was finally building for myself. I started working with a small construction crew, helping restore old homes around town. It wasn't glamorous, but it was grounding. There was something poetic about rebuilding walls for others after watching mine collapse. Each hammer swing, each layer of paint, felt like therapy proof that even things once broken could stand again. Sometimes, I'd catch myself thinking about her, not with anger, but with a strange detachment. She'd become more of a story than a persona, memory filed away in some quiet corner of my mind. I didn't check her social media, didn't ask about her. I didn't need to. People like Emma thrive on attention, and my silence was the last thing she could never control. One afternoon, while driving to a new job site, I took a wrong turn and found myself near the old neighborhood. The house stood there, freshly painted, a new family's laughter spilling from the open windows. Kids' toys scattered across the front yard, a golden retriever asleep on the porch. It looked alive against something it never felt like when it was ours. I parked down the street for a moment, just watching. No bitterness, no nostalgia, just quiet acceptance. That place wasn't my home anymore, was just a chapter that taught me how much of myself I'd given away. As I drove off, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. Tired eyes, sure, but steady ones. The kind of eyes that finally saw the truth. She lost the house. I lost my illusions. But somehow, I got the better deal.